and then demonstrating with your copy and telling stories and building that bond through email, that's going to be a much more long-term effective strategy. It's going to increase retention and loyalty, which is super important for e-commerce as well, because that's kind of the name of the game.
You're listening to Copy and Conversion with Brad Wages.
Hey guys, Brad Wages here. Welcome back and thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be talking about email marketing for e-commerce businesses. And for that reason, I have Mr. Chris Orzechowski here. He is an expert in that field. Chris is a copywriter, email marketer, coach, and online entrepreneur. So I'm excited to talk with him today. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad. Super pumped to be here.
Cool. Chris, I know you recently had some big news. You had an addition to the family.
Yes. Yeah, baby Blake. He was born March 31st at 12:22 a.m. So, been a 2-3 weeks since then, and happy to have him home and have him quarantined with us. So, yeah.
Awesome. Congrats, dude.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump on into some of these questions, Chris. I gave you a little bit of an intro, but can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am a e-commerce email strategist and copywriter. I work mainly, obviously, with e-commerce brands, mostly direct-to-consumer brands. I do have a history of also working with some digital publishers, course creators, coaches, authors as well. I've kind of been a little bit all over the place in my career, but the last few years I've definitely really settled in on e-commerce. And what I like to do with those clients and those companies is basically build email marketing systems for them that can basically run around the clock, sell while they sleep, and increase their average order value, increase their lifetime value, increase the amount of purchases they get, the amount of conversions they get, and just help them, generate more cash flow so they can grow and scale a lot faster.
Awesome. Chris, like you mentioned, you have a diverse experience in copywriting. You've worked, I know, with Jeff Walker. You've worked with info publishers, course publishers a lot in the past, and now you're very focused on e-commerce. How did you make that decision to kind of niche down specifically on email for e-commerce?
Yeah. So, what my philosophy has been for like most of my copywriting career has been like try everything and then chisel away the stuff that you don't like, or not that you don't like, but just, after a while you start to realize that some projects kind of give you energy and some projects sap you of energy. And after a while, I did for probably 4 years straight, just launches, like big, large scale launches every single month, sometimes 2 or 3 in a month. And after a couple of years of that, I was just like tired. I was just very exhausted. And whenever I had, in between all those, I had always been working with e-commerce clients as well. Whenever I've been doing those projects, they usually always worked. They always worked well. They sold a lot. They were much lower stress, and they're fun. So I was like, why don't I just do these? And that's pretty much it. So I kind of made that pivot. And, something too about the tangibility of the physical product that's nice to write for. It's a little bit less abstract. Like sometimes when you're like super deep in selling courses and doing webinars and launches and videos and all these things, it's like you almost lose a little bit of like, touch with the physical world, right? Like it's almost too abstract sometimes because you have to think about the stories and like super deep into it. I'm not saying we don't use that in e-commerce as well, but with a physical product, something cool, something you could hold in your hands and you could, see visually, how it's being used in someone's life. So for me as a writer, after there were some, some markets that I'd worked in and just some types of campaigns that, I reached the point where I said, I think I've said all I can say in the world of personal development. I think I've said all I could say, in the world of doing marketing, selling marketing courses. You just reach that point where you're like, I've said it all. I've written, a few thousand pages of copy. I don't know if I have any other ideas left. I kind of left it all out there. But with e-commerce, it's fun because there's just so many cool products and cool brands that have their own unique personalities, which are a lot of fun to write for.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Okay, so Chris, tell me about your philosophy when it comes to e-commerce email marketing. 'Cause I know you have a specific kind of approach and specific way that you view things.
Yeah. So I guess the simplest way to sum it up would be it's kind of aligns with Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans, and you are kind of like the leader who is going to help, your people, the people on your list. Doesn't matter what you're selling. This is a common idea in like digital courses and the info product world, but in e-commerce, I think it's even more important. Like you want to help the people on your list get certain outcomes in their lives, and your physical products are going to be the vehicles that help them make that happen. So instead of running constant flash sales and promotions and you don't want to be one of those people who's just running the same 20% off sale week after week after week, because after a while people just tune that stuff out. Like I believe in making your emails themselves valuable and focusing on outcomes for the outcomes that your prospects and customers want, and then demonstrating with your copy and telling stories and building that bond through email. That's going to be a much more long-term effective strategy. It's going to increase retention and loyalty, which is super important for e-commerce as well, because that's kind of the name of the game. And it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun for people who are reading your emails. They'll enjoy them more. So, I just have never been, I know some of the, flash sales definitely work, right? Like you'll make money. Some people will buy something every single day if you have a big enough list. But I think that's a good way to burn out your list. And I think the way to have longevity and to continue to grow and scale and get more leverage is by having awesome copy and kind of taking people on that journey with you through your emails.
Awesome. Cool. So Chris, when you're working with these e-commerce companies, what kinds of things are you consulting on? Obviously, you're doing copy, you're doing strategy, but are you helping out with things like segmentation, deliverability, split testing, maybe some of those more technical aspects of email marketing?
Yeah, all that stuff, all the above. And again, it depends client to client, right? Like not every client needs every single problem solved. Some of them have those problems solved already. I was talking to a client the other day who needs help setting up some segments, and that will kind of be one of the first things we do before then we build out automations. And then once all that stuff is kind of set and in place, obviously you monitor and split test and tweak and optimize as you go on. But then once you have that, then you can do a lot of cool broadcast campaigns and layer those things on top of the automation. So it definitely depends, but it's all part of the email marketing puzzle and making it all work correctly.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah,
different aspects to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, how is writing copy for an e-com business unique? What makes it different from, say, writing for an online training business or a SaaS business?
So I think with e-com, there's a lot of ways to demonstrate your products with words rather than just using, just here's a picture of the product, right? Because that's what a lot of people do. I think with, some of the, SaaS or digital products, the way that you mainly demonstrate is just telling stories about people who have used the product, which is a great practice, and you can absolutely do that with e-com. But I think there's some more clever ways to demonstrate with physical products as well, in terms of shifting people's beliefs, in terms of telling the creation stories of how these products are made or how they're used or where the ingredients are sourced from, those kind of things. So, obviously it's all storytelling, but I think you have a lot of opportunities to not only demonstrate, but also to dimensionalize the benefits and explain all the different ways that these products can be used. And, just share that in the copy with the email campaigns that you're writing.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, you mentioned storytelling, and I know you've been a big advocate of storytelling and email and copy for a long time. What are some of the ways an e-commerce business can incorporate storytelling into their messaging, particularly if they're selling kind of simple, maybe lower cost products like a t-shirt or like packaged food items? They don't have all that sort of emotion around it, like, say, a high ticket training course does.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the easiest way is someone's always going to use this product, and then what happens to in their life after they use the product? Like, you can think about who they become. You could think about what they're able to now do. You can think about, if it's a t-shirt and it's like a funny t-shirt, or if it's like, there's that company Tipsy Elves, which has like the ugly Christmas sweaters. Like, What are the stories you tell there? Well, it's always the story of like being that guy or girl who walks in and like wins the ugly sweater party, right? Like maybe that's just one example. That might not be the best example in the world, but like there's always an example of how someone is using the product and then what happened as a result of that. So, even if it's something boring, like someone's buying this product to solve a problem in their life, and then they're going to expect a certain outcome from using that product. So just, a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, like I have a generic product, I have a boring product, but like why, what is the motivation? Like what is the problem? What's the pain? And then what are they trying to move towards? So those are the things I always try to think about as much as possible, especially when it comes to e-com.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so true. No matter what the product is, there's always a pain or a problem that somebody is looking to solve by buying that product, whether it's $5 or $500. There's always a story.
Mm-hmm. For instance, like years ago, I worked on this campaign for this watch company, Filippo Loretti, and one of the emails I wrote for their launch was, "Can your appearance affect your salary?" And we actually cited this article from Neil Patel, and I guess he did this experiment where he spent like $100,000 on like clothes or something and his appearance, and it translated to like a $600,000 increase in his business. I don't remember the specifics, but it was something along those lines. Yeah, so we like cited that in the copy to sell the watch. Instead of saying, "Look how cool the watch is, here's a button, go buy it," we were like, "Hey, if you upgrade your appearance, you might feel better. You might, start carrying yourself with more confidence. You might speak up more in meetings. You might whatever. One of the easiest ways to upgrade your appearance is by getting a nice watch. Like that's an easy way for you to start. And right now we have this promotion going on, blah, 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 blah. Here's the link." And that email did very well. So, there's always clever ways to kind of weave, different kinds of stories and those examples into the copy.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, how do you approach lifecycle automations? Automations, lifecycle emails are big in e-commerce. They're a big part of driving revenue there. So in your opinion, what's kind of the 80-20 of automated sequences? Like which ones should an e-commerce business focus on creating first?
I'd say cart abandonment is probably the biggest one. That's like easily the lowest hanging fruit. It just kills me, a piece of my soul dies every time I see, these huge companies, they don't even have a cart abandonment in place because it's just such easy money. And I've met some companies who've been around for years, like e-commerce companies, and they just have not had that. And I'm like, what, like, why? It's 3 emails. You could write it in an hour, but whatever. So that's like the easiest money. And then there's obviously browse abandonments probably next. And then you probably have a win back and a VIP. And those are like the core 4. If you get those in place, there's many others that you could do. There's probably 10, 15, 20 other, depending on what you sell and the way your funnels work and the way, if it's consumable or non-consumable, there's so many different things you could do. But if you get those 4 in place, that is definitely a super solid 80-20 for your business.
Cool. Yeah. Talking about businesses, even big businesses that don't have things like cart abandonment, other simple low-hanging fruit automations in place. I worked at Golden Hippo Media. I think you know that they're almost like $1 billion company with a bunch of different direct consumer e-com brands. And when I was there, they didn't have cart abandonment. They didn't have any kind of browse abandonment in any of those like basic automations. And I just can't imagine how many millions of dollars was just kind of overlooked every year by not having those simple things in place. So even like some of the big businesses out there don't have these kind of automations. So
yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, I understand why it happens, because as a business owner or like as a marketer, there's always a million, as fires you got to put out, there's a million things you got to do. But that's why, like, I guess people like me exist though. You can hire someone and say, "Hey, you continue to put out the fires or worry about all that stuff. We'll install this stuff real quick. We'll do it one time. It'll run for you in the background." Because that's oftentimes what I've always found that what happens with business owners, like they're busy and it's just like, yeah, we'll get around to it eventually. Like the one client I was telling you before, they were like a $60 million a year business and they had been in business for 5 years and they didn't have cart abandonment. And they were like, "Finally, you're here. We could work on this." I'm like, "Oh my God, you should have called me years ago." Like we could have really done some magic. But I mean, that's just what happens. But then again, that's also why like some companies continue to grow and continue to have more of that margin and others don't, right? Because, some companies will succeed in spite of that stuff and some companies will succeed in spite of it until they don't. So.
Yeah. And then there's so much of the like tech side with the integration with the email and the e-commerce platform. So I think that's probably part of it as well, is just kind of the complexity of the tech side for a lot of businesses.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is there's so many solutions now, like Klaviyo, even like Drip, like there's a lot of softwares. I think Shopify, like a couple of days ago, just launched their own email software. I don't know much about it, but I just heard about, like I said, I don't know any features or details, but I just heard that came out. So, and they're, they got, how many millions of customers, so that'll be pretty big. But the good news is it is getting easier and easier. So like I think, 10 years ago, especially, this would have been very hard. But like now the barrier to entry is just getting lower, like each and every year, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. So Chris, are there any non-standard automations that you have built out for e-commerce clients that did really well?
Non-standard automations. I'm not sure. Probably.
Or even like non-standard strategies, because there's sort of like, with Klaviyo, say there's set automations already built in. So looking beyond like, those standard ones that they supply. So
yeah, so I'd say the biggest non-standard strategy that I push, my clients and the people that I work with to use are super plain text emails. And, and that's such like in the course space, that's like, oh yeah, plain text. So that's what you do in your email. 90% of people know that, but in e-com, it's still such a new idea. Which is very interesting because, and I get it because a lot of physical products, like you have the tangibility, you can take the pictures, you can show those things. But what I've always found is like, it's a Howard Gossage quote, who's like my favorite, like vintage ad man. He said, people don't read ads, they read what's interesting to them. Sometimes it's an ad. And like, I just really resonate with that little piece of his philosophy. Well, most of the piece of his philosophy, but that one in particular, because with email, like what I've always found is there's some people who are deletable and there's some people who are undeletable. And, your inbox is probably the same way. Like for me, like I'll get 100 emails a day, but there's 15 or 20 that I'll read them and then I'll save them. They won't get deleted because not that I'll come back to them, but I might want to search, or I might want to like, oh, it's that person said something a month ago that's interesting. I want to come back to that. Or maybe you batch them and you read them all at once, right? But there's those kind of emails, and there's other emails where you're like, yeah, this is an ad. I know I can delete this right off the bat. You know? So like, how do you, like, which camp do you want your emails to be in? And it's kind of binary. It's going to be one or the other, right? Because people are either going to know, oh yeah, this is a promo and I don't want to be sold to today, delete, or this is interesting, I'm going to read this, I'm going to come back to it.
Yeah. And if they're good enough, say the emails like somebody you send out, or maybe Laura Belgray, there's going to be a pitch, and yet you still want to read because the email is so damn good.
Yeah. And that just goes back to like the outcomes of our products, right? Because if you just take a picture of your product and then tell someone to buy it, you're focusing on the product. If you focus on the outcome, which is when you're using like Laura does, or like I do, or like a lot of good, brands do, when they take you on the journey and they tell the stories, or they update you with what's going on at the company, and like they use that plain text and they use that space instead of burying it with a hero image or something, right? When they bring you along with them on that journey, it doesn't matter. You could swap out products. It's not about the product at that point. It's about you and the relationship and where you're trying to help them get to.
Chris, do you ever get resistance or pushback when talking to clients who are interested in working with you because they know your track record, but then maybe they're used to that kind of image heavy, simple, super short emails that are focused on images? Do you ever get resistance from clients when you first start working with them to changing over to that sort of text-based, story-based format?
I don't, but I'm also very good at filtering and client selection, so that's probably why. I'm not saying that people don't get resistance, but if that's someone's belief system and they're going to fight me on that tooth and nail, then I'm just not going to work with them. It's nothing, no bad blood, but it's just like, if that's what you want to do, I don't do that work. If you just want a hero image, like 4 words of copy and like a big flashing discount, like that's going to be someone else. That's not going to be a job for Chris or his agency. So, and that's just the way that I approach it. And, I guess the answer, I think the question that is on people's minds when you ask this question is like, well, what happens if I'm in that situation? Like, what do I say? Right. And I think that the best way, if you are in that situation where you did take on a client and they're fighting you a little bit and they want super image heavy or super, crazy design, and you want to kind of focus more on the copy, propose a split test, right? Because then definitively with the data, and numbers don't lie. And people still might, be stuck in their ways because, sometimes people need things to be their ideas if they're going to see them through. But that I've had copywriters that I've coached who have done that and say, hey, well, why don't we just test it out and see what the numbers look like? And they win by a huge margin. I had one copywriter who hired me to consult with him on an email sequence. And it was kind of funny because he wanted to go all plain text and do the storytelling. And this company had never done that before. And everyone in the company was like, oh, let the kid do it. It's not going to work anyway. And then he made more sales in 4 days than they had made in 4 months. And their jaws were on the floor. And I was like, that is freaking awesome. So sometimes you just gotta prove it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. No, it makes sense. Do you think there's a certain profile of the kind of e-commerce business that is more open to that kind of approach, story-based, text-based emails, or is it just based on kind of the people who are running the business?
I think it's probably the people, because what I've always found, especially with client selection, is the belief system has to be a match more so than anything else. It's you definitely want things like list size and revenue numbers and types of products and SKUs. And you want all that stuff. And that's the demographic stuff. But if the psychographic stuff, if they don't have the same beliefs as you, and this goes for whether you do e-com email or whether you do webinars or whether you do YouTube video scripts or what, it doesn't matter what it is, right? There has to be an alignment in beliefs and belief systems, because otherwise, that's where the best business partnerships and relationships take off, when everyone is on the same page and firing on all cylinders. Or even if you disagree over small things, you're willing to work together and compromise on some of those, bigger things in order to move forward and get a good result. So I really think more so than anything, it's about aligning of beliefs. And, as a copywriter, there's ways to do that in terms of the way you market yourself and the content you put out and everything else. But that's super important.
Cool. Yeah. So by the time a prospect gets to you, they already know what you offer and they're interested specifically in that approach. So
yeah,
there's probably not going to be much resistance. They're going to be that's what we wanted already.
They're not coming to me for strategy help and then dictating strategy. And, that's happened to me before. And I end those calls early and I say, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Here's what I would do with your business if someone held a gun to my head and I had to make it succeed. I know that might not be what you want, but that's my recommendation. And that's the only thing I'm going to be able to help you with. And sometimes, you have to, and, a lot of times, obviously, if there's that big of a gap between belief systems, then it doesn't work. And that's fine. You move on to the next client and they move on and hopefully find someone who could help them execute their vision. But I think that's the most important thing, for any freelance copywriter out there is understanding what your beliefs are and what your system is, and then finding people who fit in that mold.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So this is something that's on everybody's mind all across the world. Coronavirus pandemic going on. Chris, what do you think the impact is going to be on e-commerce that's already happening from coronavirus? And what do you think the future is going to look like?
I think it's nothing but bright skies and sunny days for e-commerce. People, where are you going to buy stuff from? People need to buy stuff still. You know what I mean? You ain't going to go to the store and buy it unless it's a grocery store. So where are you going to get your stuff from? You got to get it somewhere. And you got companies like Amazon who are deprioritizing, non-essential items, I guess they call it. I don't know the exact terminology, but you order something off Prime and now it takes 10 to 14 days instead of the usual 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So it's okay, well, where are people going to buy things? People are not going to stop buying things. And you turn on the news and everything looks scary, right? Because you say, 20 million people filed for unemployment, or I don't know, whatever the number is. I don't know exactly. And it's definitely terrible. I feel for all those people, it's absolutely awful. But there's 300, 250 million, I don't know, however many other, working age people who still are getting jobs and still do have, income coming in, or they have, kids and they need to entertain them and they're going to need to spend money somehow. And, I don't want to sound callous, but like, that's just objectively what the data kind of looks like, right? Like people are still spending money. I've been following a lot of, other smart people in the e-commerce world and people who are showing data and they're like, yeah, sales are up. We've had clients have their best weeks ever, smack dab in the middle of the quarantine. And I'm like, I think that makes sense because you're stuck home, you can't go anywhere, you're bored. When people are bored, they buy things. And especially if you can't go anywhere else, like you have to buy online.
Yeah, totally. I'm hearing the same thing, seeing the same things. Some of my clients have had like their best promotions ever within the past like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. For example, like a client who sells food items online, it's like their business is just going up dramatically. So yeah, like any situation, for some people it's going to work out well, even in tough times like a pandemic.
Yeah, I had a client, one of a fellow email copycat and coaching student. He sent me he posted in the group and was like, yeah, we sent out, like, we did this like 2 email campaigns, sold $120,000 worth of goods. And like, they're also like some kind of like online grocery. So, like a very small, average order value. It's not like they're selling, $2,000 mattresses or something, right? Like they, some of their products are a couple bucks each. So like, they've just been killing it. So that's the thing. It's like, I don't know, obviously every day is different and things could change on a day-by-day basis, but I think it's just long-term. I think it's going to be very good for e-commerce. I think a lot of people are going to get used to buying from these brands and there's going to be loyalties built and there's going to be preferences, right? Because for instance, right, like if I went to the store and bought razors and now I can't go to the store anymore, well, maybe I go to Dollar Shave Club, maybe I go to Harry's, maybe I go to Supply. And then once I start using that brand, am I going to switch next month and switch the month after? Probably not, right? I'm going to probably continue to buy from that brand. So like that scenario is being played out in so many different markets and industries and with different types of products hundreds of millions of times over, right? So I think there's going to be some lasting effects from that happening.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, who are some of the e-commerce businesses out there that are doing email the right way, that are just sending out awesome emails, valuable emails that people should check out?
Yeah, so the ones that come to the top of mind are some of the ones that I've broken down in my Email of the Week blog series. And, Shinesty is one that they're just the funniest people on earth, I think. Like they have the funniest, you won't find a company with funnier, more engaging, I guess, email copy. Those guys are funny as shit. And then
what do they do? What's their business? They
sell, I guess, like apparel, I guess you could say, like underwear, and they have like these, like, they sent this email out the other day, like the subject line was like, you want the Tiger King? Because, Tiger King's like popular on Netflix right now. And then they came out with this whole line of like Tiger Speedos and like Tiger underwear and Tiger print, like
nice.
Suits or whatever. And like, it just like, it's not stuff like you're going to wear to, to out or to work or whatever, but it's like, they got like onesies with hoods and like, it's just like funny stuff. But their team of writers, they're just phenomenal. So I think they do a great job. And, other companies, Ryan Lee's Rewind, like he's just, the go-to email. So like, even though I've tried his bars, I haven't, bought them. A friend gave me one, Abby Woodcock, when we were doing our event up in Oneida. She had like a box and I tried a couple. They're pretty good. So I haven't actually bought any from him yet, but I read every single one of his emails, and I tried them. So I know that they're good. Awesome. Yeah. His are phenomenal. Truvani also, another person. I haven't bought any of their products, but, phenomenal email marketing game. Trying to think who else, and basically the short answer is any company that I've broken down on my blog. But those are some ones that just come, top of mind that are doing a really good job.
Cool. Yeah. That series is an awesome resource for anybody who wants to check out like in-depth examples of good e-commerce emails. Definitely a place to go to check it out.
Thank you.
Chris, you recently launched a monthly newsletter. Can you tell me what led you to start that newsletter and just what the newsletter is all about?
Yeah, so I've been kicking around the idea of doing a newsletter for a while. I had grown up in my marketing career reading the Gary Halbert letter and reading, Frank Kern's newsletter and Ben Settles and Doberman Dan's and Matt Fury. And there's probably Dan Kennedy. There's probably like one or two other people whose newsletters I've been subscribed to over the years.
Okay.
But I always remember like the Gary Halbert one newsletter was like big for me because before I like ever had a client, I remember I found the file of every single newsletter, 1,100 pages, whatever it is. And I remember like going to FedEx, Kinko's, whatever, and spending like $80 to get it all printed and front and back. And I put it in the binder. The binder's like this big. It's huge. And I remember like every night, I'd work on my business and like nothing would happen and it would suck. But then every night I would like go and read an issue or two before bed. And it was just cool to see like over the, 15 or 20 years or however long he wrote all those issues for, the guy kind of like documented his life through marketing and the work that he did. Excuse me. And I always said like one day I want to do that. Right. And I want it to be a long-term project where I could document all the stuff because I'm always a big believer in like, doing the work and then documenting the wins and the processes and the failures and what I've learned. And it seemed like the perfect medium for me to do that was in a newsletter. And also on top of that, I've just been through so many courses and I've had courses and like I've created, my email copy academy course. It's got to be like 40 hours of video at least. And I got to the point where I'm like, it's good and people absolutely love it. And people's like lives have been changed by it. And it's not me saying this is what they told me. But at the same time, like, I don't want to dump another 40-hour course on someone's plate. Like, I want to give people something tangible, something they can hold in their hand, something they can read in a sitting, almost like an executive report where it's like, here's the one thing I need to do this month. And they do it and they get a great result. And like, that was where the idea kind of started. I said, how can I build this? So it took a long time to get everything set up and to come up with the hook and the angle and all the content that I wanted to put in it. And, the schedule and the infrastructure and everything else. It was definitely a lot of work, but now I have this kind of, documentation of all the stuff that I'm doing. And like, as I'm doing projects with clients, like I'm taking what made those things successful and breaking them down into the newsletter. Cause there were so many people too, who were like, so many people on my list were asking me, they're like, man, I'd love to like mentor under you, or I'd love to like, just, be able to hang around and learn what you're doing. I'm like, okay, well, I'll show you in the newsletter. And, it's not going to be 150 pages every month. It'll be, 16 pages, 20 pages, 22 pages, like whatever it is. It's short. You can read it in, 20, 25 minutes, get what you need, get an actionable strategy that you could actually use in your business. And people have been doing that. Like I had a guy who he just got the April issue in the mail. And, within 3 days, he'd taken the one strategy that I had shown and made $450 with it. And then another guy had gotten it too. He's overseas. And he's like, yeah, I tried that one email you included. I made $1,000 already. And so I can't wait to use it again. I'm like, yeah, cool. Keep using it, man. Like it's working. So that was the whole goal. It was like, how do I deliver money in the mail essentially to people? Because if I do a strategy or a campaign for one client, like you can adapt these things for your own business. So like that was the big thing. Not everyone has the money to work with me one-on-one or to work with my agency. So I said, why don't I just break it down in a format where people can kind of do it themselves.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. I'm on your email list, Chris. So I get the emails that you send promoting that, and they're always super, super compelling and interesting, story driven. So I'd be interested to know, could you share maybe one or two strategies with us here that you talk about maybe in some of your past episodes or past newsletters?
I don't know if that'd be fair to my existing subscribers.
Okay. So you got to sign up to get that.
You got to sign up to get the good stuff. Yep.
Okay, cool. What other kind of stuff are you working on? Any other cool projects that you got in the works?
Yeah, I've launched an agency where I'm basically going to be doing larger scale projects with e-commerce companies that I work with. And the reason why is, especially now that I have a child and all the other things that I have going on in my life, I just don't have the same amount of time in order for me to sit down and write out, a bazillion pages of copy for every single project. The thing is, like, ordinarily I could just take my ball and go home and say, okay, I'm not going to work with clients, but I don't really like that idea. And I still, I'm in the mode right now where I just want to continue to build out, I want to build another vehicle for myself for the work that I do, something that's long-term. where I could kind of like, bring on writers and train them and get them up to speed and have them work on cool, exciting projects. And I can kind of guide, foster their learning and also get clients great results at the same time. So, it's called Orze Media. And it's a very small boutique agency. We don't work with a ton of clients, and I really focus on working with, a small handful of clients doing super high quality work because, with a lot of people I've talked to with agencies, they say, oh, it's a nightmare. And I think the reason why is because you got to keep growing. You get another 2 clients, you got to hire another 2 people, right? And I kind of want to flip that model on its head. I kind of want to keep it intentionally small, work with a handful of people where we can go super deep with their companies, kind of like the same way that I do with my current clients, but just have some extra bodies and some extra people to kind of give even more support and get them better results even faster with email. So that's kind of what I'm building out. That is a beast of a process. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of SOPs, there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of project management, there's a lot of, more marketing on the front end that has to be done. There's a lot of stuff, but that's what I'm excited about, building out. And, I've already started taking on clients, but I just can't wait to really just perfect that process and make it even better.
Awesome, man. What kind of team structure are you building there?
It's going to be super small. So it's going to be me, a small handful of writers and a small project management team and, possibly some tech support / implementation people as well. But, we're talking 5 people, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. My goal is not to build the next Ogilvy and Mather, right? It's to just kind of keep it small and just get awesome results.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. That's definitely exciting.
Yeah, I'm pumped about it.
So for people watching who want to learn more about you, Chris, what you do and what you offer, some of your products, courses, things like that, where's the best place to go to find out more?
Yeah, if you go to theemailcopywriter.com, you can get a free copy of my book just for signing up to my list, and you can get all my emails and hopefully become a newsletter subscriber too. But that's theemailcopywriter.com.
Awesome. And that is a great book as well. So if you don't have it yet, definitely check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Well, Chris, hey, it was great having you on. Enjoy talking with you, catching up. And yeah, man, hopefully talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, Brad. Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
You've been listening to Copy and Conversion with me, Brad Wages. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more, you can subscribe via iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen. For show notes and a transcript of this episode, you can find those and more at bradwages.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.